Hi all, welcome back to the discussion on quantum optics. So today we are going to discuss experimental realization of the Jaynes-Cummings model. So we know that Jaynes-Cummings model is basically a theoretical model which describes the interaction between a single Bode field and a two-level atom or a two-level system. Okay, so there are many ways to achieve this particular model in a laboratory, and here we are going to discuss a few of the models. So particularly we'll be focusing on the model which is discussed in your textbook, the textbook of Introduction to Quantum Optics by Gary and Knight. And we'll also discuss some of the model which is already in practice in several labs for research purposes. Okay, so the first experiment, historically, the first experiment to verify the JCM was conducted by the Serge Harossian group. Okay, and parallelly, there was another group as well. It is called the Vineland group. Okay, I am not going to explain this Vineland group works in this particular lecture. It is also the part of the Jaynes-Cummings model, and I will briefly give what is the actual experiment done by the Vineland later. Okay, so I am focusing on the work of the Serge Haroche because that is the experiment discussed in your textbook. Okay, so the interaction Hamiltonian of the JCM, we already know that it is given as h cross lambda sigma plus a plus sigma minus rx. So this represent the interaction between the atom and the field. Okay, so here we have a multiplication factor lambda, and if lambda is high, then obviously it means the interaction between the field and atom would be larger. Okay, and this interaction term is basically depending upon few factors, and the few of the important factors are, one is DGE. So better I will use some other color. So this is one factor is of our interest, and another factor is capital V. And what is DGE? So DGE is the dipole matrix element. It is basically the inner product of the dipole moment operator within the G and E, where here G is the ground state and E is the excited state of the atom, and V is the volume of the cavity. Okay, so therefore obviously to increase the interaction between the atom and the field, we must reduce the volume. So you have to reduce the volume of the cavity, and we have to increase the dipole moment. Okay, so in order to achieve this, the Serge Haroche has used um, a Rydberg atom for the purpose of atom with very high dipole moment. Okay, so they used the Rydberg atom. So it is basically an ordinary atom with the valence electron excited to high principal quantum number. The high principal quantum number means it is the quantum number is in the order of 50. The principal quantum number is also the order of 50, and this atom is injected into a Fabry-Perot resonator. It's basically the Fabry-Perot resonator is basically a cavity. So that is basically constructed by two spherical mirrors, and these spherical mirrors are made with copper, and it is coated with neodymium, and plus it is cooled to very low temperature in the temperature range of 1 Kelvin. So it is cooled to very low temperature. So therefore it acts as a perfect reflector for the photons. Okay, so the schematic of the experiment is like this. So we have the two perfect reflectors. So this is made up of neodymium, so neodymium coated on copper, and we have an atom at the center. So you have a two-level atom, and this two-level atom is nothing but your Rydberg atoms. Okay, so in order to achieve a very good interaction between this Rydberg atom and the cavity, we should have very high Q factor. The Q factor is in the order of 3 into 10 raised to 8, and the other variables are the separation between these mirrors are around 27 millimeter, and the radius of curvature of the spherical mirrors is around 40 millimeter, and temperature is around 1 Kelvin. Okay, and the Rydberg atom is nothing but a normal atom. Usually they use rubidium atoms. Okay, so rubidium atom with the valence electron excited to very high quantum number, that is in the order of n equal to 50. And if you look at n equal to 50, then it's n equal to 50, L equal to 49, and M equal to 49. And so we are interested in the transition between these two. Okay, so N50, L49 and M49, there is the state NLM. I can write as 50, 49, 49, and it is going to transition to 51, 50, 50. So these states are called the circular Rydberg states. Okay, so the rubidium atom or the Rydberg atom, which is in the circular Rydberg states, is under transition, and these two states are represented as G and E, and this transition frequency is around 51.1 gigahertz. Okay, and if you look at the just lower energy level, the lower energy level is around 54.3 gigahertz. So if you have a cavity which is having a resonant frequency around 50 gigahertz or 51 gigahertz, then the cavity will have in resonance with the transition between G and E, and the transition to the G and F would be very minimal, so that we can treat the Rydberg atoms or these rubidium atoms, which is excited to this very high this quantum number, are interacting with a single mode field, and this interaction the atom behaves as simply as a two-level atom, because the transition between only the G and E would be going to happen in this particular case. Okay, now in order to ensure the interaction between the atom and field, the atom must be within the cavity, but that is very difficult to achieve. It is possible to keep the atom at the middle of the cavity, but experimentally it is not very simple. So what the Hiroshi has done is, they have sent these atoms one by one through this cavity with very small speed. Okay, so there are two ways. So either we have to keep atom inside the cavity or send the atom with very small speed, so that the traversing time through the cavity is much greater than the atom field interaction time. Okay, so for the experiment the Hiroshi has done, the speed of the atom is around 110 to 250 meter per second, and which gives a relaxation time of greater than 200 microseconds. And usually in this particular setup, the interaction time between the atom and field is around 40 to 90 microseconds. So obviously the interaction time is much lower than the relaxation time, so that means the atom can obviously interact with the field while it is traversing through the cavity. So this is the experimental setup which is used by the Serge Haroche, and they have studied it, and they have studied how the state of the atom changes when the atoms traversing through this cavity. And they have done the experiment, and they have found, so initially they have sent the atom in the ground state, so the inversion is from zero. So we have the different experimental plots, the A, B, C and D, all these are the experimental plots with the initial state of the atom is in the ground state. So therefore the inversion value will start from -1. So for if you look at all this graph, sorry, it is not the inversion, it is in the graph it is the transition rate. Okay, so left side is the transition rate. Okay, that is already written here. It is E to G transfer rate or a transition rate. So initially the atom is in the ground state, the transition state is 0, and we can see the atom is going to excite, and it is reaching to the excited state. Then it undergoes the transition to the ground state and vice versa, and finally we'll have a kind of the Rabi oscillations. So here for all the graph A, B, C and D, all these graphs you can see a kind of Rabi oscillations. So here this particular graph A, here the field is thermal, the initial field is in thermal state, and for all B, C, and D, the field is in coherent state. Okay, so none of them is in the Fox state. The field is not in the Fox state. Therefore, you cannot see a perfect transition from the ground state to the excited state and vice versa. But since the states are the thermal state and coherent state, again we can see a kind of the Rabi oscillations, but they will not be having a perfect transition from G to E or E to G. And once it starts from some particular state, you can see the atom would be in the superposition state later. And moreover, in case of coherent state, we already said that there is a possibility of collapse and revival. So here you can see a kind of collapse here. So if you look at B, there is some kind of collapse around this time. And if you look at D, you can see collapse here around here, and C also collapse around here. And we have a revival time here also as well. So we can see a collapse and revival in the C and D. It is very clear in these graphs. So these are not the graph plotted from the theoretical value. These are the graph plotted from the experimental value, and the complete experiment setup is given here. So I'm not going to explain what is actually happening inside this experiment setup. So but the particularly the heart of this experiment is this portion. So this is your cavity field interacting region, and plus there are the other things as well. You can see an oven here, so it basically emits the atom which is prepared in ground state, which is excited to n equal to 50, and after that it is passing through R1 and then cavity, after that R2. This R1 and R2 is basically called the Ramsey interferometer. Okay, I'm not going to explain what is the role of this R1 and R2 here, but with this setup you can see, you can check what would be the state of the atom finally when it passes through this step, and that can be done through this detector. So you can see whether the atom is in the ground state or in the excited state. Okay, so this is the setup which is the first done, this done by the Harrosian team, and there is a similar setup by the Vineland. And actually these two teams have got the Nobel Prize. The Harosha and Weiland have got the Nobel Prize. The Harosha method I have already explained. So we'll keep the field which is confined within a cavity, and through it we'll pass the Rydberg atoms. Okay, so the Vineland method is just opposite to it. So in the Vineland method, basically the Vineland has trapped ions, charged ions within the electrodes. So you can see the ions here. So ions are trapped inside. Okay, and the light is passed through these trapped ions. So in this way also you can study the atom field interaction, the interaction between a two level atom and the field. So these are the two different methods, the exactly opposite methods, and these two methods for implementing Jaynes Cummings model through implementing the atom field interaction through this method, the Harosha and Weiland got the Nobel Prize. And the other ways to perform this the Jaynes Cummings model setup is by using the artificial atom. So we have already discussed the Harosha setup, the complete Harosha setup. The Rydberg atoms pass through the Ramsey interferometer, the series of Ramsey interferometer and cavity as well. Okay, so the same thing can be implemented in superconducting qubits. Okay, so that kind of setup in total it is called circuit QED setups. And setup which is basically based on the cavity is called cavity QED setup. So this is a schematic for cavity QED, and this is the schematic for the circuit QED. So in circuit QED you can see a Joseph's junction. So this is basically will act as a two level atom, and this is basically will act as an artificial atom. okay. And this the atom is going to interact with the microwave, so we can see a transmission line here. So through this transmission line the microwave can be transferred. So this artificial atom, it is two-level artificial atom and microwave can interact. So you can manipulate the state of this artificial atom by sending this microwave. So that is the another way to achieve the interaction. And there are other ways as well. There are the ways called using quantum dots, and there are ways to achieve this particular setup using the nitrogen vacancy centers. NV centers is basically called NV centers. So okay, so there are many ways to do this. So the foremost one is the cavity QED, and the other one is circuit QED, and we can have interaction with quantum dots and n bits. And so there are many ways to achieve the Jaynes Cummings model experimentally, but mainly for your textbook case, if particularly if you're looking at your syllabus point of view, we have to focus only the cavity QD setup, in which the atom is going to interact with the field which is confined within the cavity. Okay, so that's all for today, and so with this we have completed the discussion of the Jaynes Cummings model. And next we have to discuss what is meant by the coherence of light and different measures to check the coherence of light, the classical function, and as well as the quantum coherence function. So those things we'll be discussing from the next class onwards. So thank you for watching this video. We'll coming with new lectures soon.